Thank you so much, Don. So, a little bit about what I'll be covering today. I'm going to be doing a brief introduction. We'll look at document formats, color accessibility, Microsoft Word accessibility, PowerPoint accessibility. We'll go into Equidocs and then some AI accessibility workflows. So, we have kind of a jam-packed session. And so, I'm going to jump right into the introduction. So, a little bit about me. I was born with mild cerebral palsy, prosopagnosia, or face blindness, and ADHD. And when I went to public school in fourth grade, I really struggled, and teachers had a hard time supporting my learning. So, for example, I used a pencil to take notes, and in the classroom, the teacher came around, saw my notes, and said, "No one can leave for recess until Austin finishes taking notes on the board." And so I made everybody in the whole class stay late, so I could. The teacher made everyone stay late so I could finish writing the notes, and it was a really humiliating experience. And I was really fortunate that in fifth grade, I went to a school called Westmark that really embraced adapting and modifying assignments. And so instead of using like a pencil to take notes, I was given an Alpha Smart, which is kind of like a laptop that just does word processing. And I learned how to use Final Cut Pro instead of making poster board projects. And what ended up occurring is I made a ton of different videos for my classes. I actually got my bachelor's degree from Loyola Marymount in film production. So my point in kind of sharing this is that when you're thinking about your documents or your content, being mindful of how you can adapt it to reach the broadest audience and foster success is really important to consider. A little bit about our office. So the Office of Digital Accessibility hosts office hours to discuss specific accessibility questions. On that site, there is like a spreadsheet where you can go in and put in your time. So like we have two 30-minute blocks. You can also share whatever resource you're working on. And one thing I'm realizing as I'm talking, I want to make sure I put into the chat real quick is there's a link to a Google Drive folder I'm going to put in that has that has these slides, that also has all the different resources I'm going to be covering throughout. So I recommend checking that folder out. And then as we do like the Word or the Equidocs portion, you could go in and follow along with me if you're interested. Going back to like the presentation, there's also a lot of PDF and captioning vendors that we have available. We have like master service agreements, so it makes it easier to start using a captioning vendor or a document accessibility vendor. Your office has to pay for the service, but the contract's already in place. And we also have a variety of resources on our website that can help you learn more about how to make your content accessible. So looking at document formats for a second, one of the key principles is you want to be providing accessible Microsoft Word documents or web pages. Those are some of the more inclusive options. You can provide an accessible PDF, and we're going to go over how to do that today as well. But it's important to keep in mind some of the challenges with PDF accessibility. So, like for example, it's difficult to change the font. This could be difficult for someone who maybe has dyslexia to access the content. It might be easier having a Word document where you can change the font a lot easier than a PDF document. Another issue with PDF documents is that sometimes the content can be compressed. So if you have like a file where there's been a lot of compression to it, it may pixelate when magnified. So that could impact someone who has low vision and needs the content magnified. So being aware of that. And then even if you have a fully accessible PDF document, the other thing that can come up is that the person accessing it may not have the right PDF viewer. So usually we recommend Adobe PDF Viewer, but maybe someone has a different application or an older version, and that could create accessibility issues, even if the PDF is accessible. So those are kind of some things to keep in mind of why it's helpful to provide multiple formats beyond just the PDF. And again, if you have content that is like a web page, it may not be necessary to make it also a document. You could just have the accessible, like an accessible web page available. So looking at some of the document paths that you could choose, Microsoft Office documents have some inherent advantages. For one, Microsoft Office has a built-in accessibility checker, which I'm going to show later. They also make it relatively easy to remediate a document and make it accessible. Um, you can also take that Word document and export it as an accessible PDF. So if you do remediate it in Word, you're getting two different versions that you could share, the PDF and the Word doc. Google Docs, there's no accessibility checker. It's also not possible right now to make tables accessible in Google. So if you're dealing with a lot of table content, that's something where you may be looking at needing to use Microsoft Word. And then if you try and save a Google Doc and as a PDF, just download it as a PDF, it's not going to be accessible regardless of what you do to the document. And that's why you could download it as a Word document and then from there make an accessible Word doc and export to PDF, but you can't do it directly from Google. So those are kind of some things to kind of keep in mind. And then when it comes to PDF documents, if you're creating a PDF document, you could leverage like Microsoft Office or Adobe InDesign or some of the main platforms. You could also remediate an inaccessible PDF if you have just the PDF file from like a third party or something using Equidocs, or if the vendor's not compatible like Canva, it's not possible to make an accessible PDF using that platform. Or you could pay for a vendor to remediate the PDF file. So one other thing to kind of think about when you're sharing documents, you actually could share a Microsoft Office version of a document. So Office files can be viewed by like Google Workspace applications like Google Docs. They could also be converted to a Google Doc very easily. You just save as Google Doc. And then that file could also be downloaded as an accessible Microsoft Word document. So that's kind of what I've done with like the resources document that I shared. It's like actually like a Word doc file, but you can view it using Google Docs. And that's something I'd encourage you to consider when you're kind of sharing your different files. So maybe some key questions to be kind of thinking about when you're looking at remediating documents is like, one, is this document needed, right? Like you may have very old documents that potentially you could take down from your site that wouldn't really impact anybody. And so in that case, maybe just removing the document might be the option, or maybe that content's already available as a web page, so you don't need the PDF document potentially. So those are kind of some things to consider there. You also have like what platform was the document created? If it was created using a third party and you don't have access to the original file, or like a platform like Canva where you can't make an accessible PDF using Canva, then using Equidocs would be a good option. If you have access to that original file as a Word doc or as an Adobe InDesign document, then you could go and be looking at those applications. And I think the last thing to think about is like how complex is the document. The more complexity you start adding to the document, the more time it will take to remediate. And that's where it may be more beneficial if you have a really long, like say a couple hundred pages and it's complex, maybe looking at like a vendor to save you some time. Um, so I have different resources that I'm going to kind of profile in a second, but like um, we have through our accessibility training modules, which is on that resources document, you can access something called DQ University. It's like a third-party platform that we partnered with that made this available to anyone in the Stanford community, and they could go and get access to courses about how to make Microsoft Office or Google Workspace documents accessible. So they have courses on that. They have a lot of courses on web accessibility. So uh, I'll show that in a second. And then in addition, we have Equidocs available too to the campus community, and that's a platform. It's an online platform you can use to remediate an accessible PDF document. And I guess maybe I will check the chat here and just see if there's any questions so far. So I see someone asked, are Google Docs more or less accessible than Word? So I think that was kind of answered, but generally Word docs are more accessible or easier to make accessible. I got a question about PowerPoint docs. Can they be made accessible? Yes, PowerPoint documents can be made accessible. It's the more complex the document is, the more you need to start to look at ensuring that the read order, like how the content is read, ensuring that order is logical. And I'll kind of cover that in a little bit. Um, and then you can also take a PowerPoint and create an accessible PDF. Um, I think someone's highlighting the Scribe resource to do that, but you could actually also do that directly now on Mac or PC. They've recently added a save as PDF option, and it will make an accessible PDF version of your slides. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. So I'm going to jump over here, and we have our resources document with the different resources. And I want to bring up the accessibility training module. So if I select like request an account, it will take me into the Smartsheet form. And you could, submit this information in roughly 24 hours. I'll create your account, and you'll have access to the platform. I also recommend using the sign up tutorial to learn how to link up your SSO. And when you're putting in the information and everything, make sure you're using your SUNET ID because it does not work well with aliases. You don't want to use an alias, so just make sure you're adding in your SUNET. When you look at the course Excel itself, like the platform itself, there's a ton of courses that you get access to. So I'm looking at over here, like you have your fast track accessibility courses, which are kind of like the overview courses. Most of those fast track courses are video based, and then there's specific courses on web accessibility and document accessibility. I have here like a little snippet from a course from Microsoft Word accessibility. It's like a video that would play. And then this is from the Word accessibility techniques course, and it's more of a web page that you could read with step by step. So it kind of depends which way you like interacting with content. If you like a video, they have videos. If you like reading a web page or an article, they have that as well. One other thing I'll mention too is that when I go up to the top there, I'm signed into some custom courses. And so like, for example, the School of Humanities and Sciences, they are requiring people as part of their training that anyone who wants to edit a website needs to take some courses on DQ. And so we're able to create like a custom learning path with whatever courses are most relevant to your department, and then push that out to everyone within your department. So that way everyone has a baseline level of training. And so that's kind of what I'm demoing with these two H&S learning paths here. And so if you're interested in that, please reach out to me. I could connect with you more about how to create a custom learning path. Um, One other thing that's noted on my resources document is the Canvas course sign up page. And so you could sign up to this Canvas course that I made, and I would kind of not focus in on the Word and stuff because that's already being kept up to date using DQ University. But there is one on captioning. So if you were particularly interested in like how to edit a Zoom uh, Zoom captions or how to edit YouTube captions, I have videos going over things like that, and also walkthrough guides that you could access on about how to do those types of changes to make accessible edited captions. These are the pages for the PDF and document accessibility services that we have. We also have our captions accessibility vendors, and they have the quotes there. For the document ones, I think you email Appligent, and then for Continual Engine, it's a platform that you sign up for. You upload the document, and then they provide a quote. And I will note here, I wanted to call out the design personas. We have different design personas that kind of help you think about people with different disabilities. So like, for example, Camilla is someone who's neurodiverse, and people who are neurodiverse appreciate simple, well-structured layouts. You want to avoid like lots of animations or things that could be distracting. So it's kind of giving you things to kind of think about as you're designing your content of what can make it accessible for different types of people. And then this one is called the Stanford Color Contrast Chart. And what's great about this is using Stanford colors, you can go in and decide. It will tell you basically if the color is accessible or not. So based on the palette colors that you're using, it could start to tell you what colors are accessible or what colors aren't accessible. So that can be really helpful information to know. You also, there's in my resources document, I link to the WebAIM contrast checker and the color contrast analyzer. I'm going to demo this next, and it's for Mac or PC, a free download that you could use to check the color. But it's helpful to be proactive about color and check it before you are starting to create your theme or whatever, so you don't have to go back and make changes later. Just going to check the chat, and then I will go to the next one.
Actually, Austin, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
The material that's covered, or I should say, what you have for the resources in the Tech Talk 2025 folder, right now it's only available to those with a Stanford Google account. And I was wondering if you can update the sharing so others without a Stanford account, possibly with the Stanford Hospital account, would also be able to have access to it.
Yes, I will update that right now.
Okay. Thank you so much. And for those who've asked about this, the link remains the same that we posted in the chat earlier. Just let us know if you run into any problems accessing the resources. Thanks a lot, Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Don. So looking at color accessibility, it's important to be aware of making sure that you're using sufficient contrast for your foreground and background colors. You want to avoid using pastel or light versions of color, using color in combination with unique symbols or other text information. So in this example here, we have a dark text on a dark blue background, and then like the same kind of dark black text on a yellow background. And if we wanted to check the color contrast, I could use the color contrast checker. And so I'm going to open up the color contrast analyzer. And what I'm going to do is just drop in the the dropper for the background here. And you want it to be 4.5 to 1 for regular text and 3 to 1 for large text. And this is at 1.8 to 1. So it's not meeting the accessibility guidelines. But then if I use the same dropper and I drop it into this yellow one, now we're at 19.6 to 1, which is like I think 20 something is black on white. So it's like almost as high as it can be, which just helps you quickly kind of identify is your color palette and the theme accessible or not and easy to read. So I recommend using this type of tool. So looking at this classroom program here, what I want to call attention to is like you want to be using a symbol, something other than color, maybe a label or a symbol to convey meaning. So you're not just using color alone. So in this example, we have a yellow diamond for the cycling studio, and we have a blue circle for Studio 111. So there's symbols and different colors conveying the meaning. But here for the Mat Studio and Fitness Center, they're both the same color. So we imagine someone who's who's colorblind. There's many different types of color blindness, but like I'm just grayscaling the image to kind of highlight that it would be difficult to identify which X refers to the fitness center or the Mat Studio, and that's why you want to have a different symbol or a label when you're creating your content and not just relying on color. So in this example on the left, I have a sales chart, different quarters as a legend, but nothing is labeled. So again, if I were to grayscale this image, it would be hard to know what is the third, which one is the third quarter. Versus on the right, I have the same pie chart, but now it's labeled, and so it's much easier to tell which slice of the pie is being referenced. And I recommend again using labels for any graphs or pie charts that you're working on. So let's dive into Microsoft Word accessibility. So what I'm gonna do for this example, we're gonna be working with the inaccessible Word document. So um, I think that will be in the in that folder. There should be a Word document folder, and you could download the inaccessible Word doc if you want to follow along with me. So in this case, what we're going to do is first go in and look at adding the metadata or really just like a title for the document. Now, the reason this is important is because what happens if the file name changes, right, and it becomes something that maybe doesn't convey the meaning of that document, you have the title, and the title will, assuming the title is inputted, it will be read in place of that and will convey what that document means. So looking over here, I can go File, Properties, and then I can choose Summary, the second one, and I could put in the title for this document. Um, One second. The evolution of language in the digital age. And then by putting that in, regardless of what the file name becomes, this was what will be read by assistive technology like screen reading software. And that helps people know what document they're accessing. So let's look now at the next step. That was pretty easy. We're going to go into looking at putting in headings. So headings provide an organizational and navigational framework that allow people using assistive technology to jump from one section to another. The key principles are headings should be succinct and headings should follow a logical and sequential order. And so what I'm going to do here is go into this slide, which is covering heading a document being accessed using screen reading software, VoiceOver, which is on Mac. And on the left, we'll see the VoiceOver rotor showing the headings, and there's no headings in the document. This is because although I bolded and I used italics and things to try and separate different sections, I didn't actually mark them as headings in the document. And so when they're not marked, they're not going to come up as headings, so someone has to navigate the whole document basically. But on the right, people can just jump to whatever section they want. The headings menu has like the 1900s or the 1800s. They could just jump to whatever item they want to go to, and it'll just take them there. And that's what you want to be that's why you want to be incorporating headings into your Word documents. So the way you can add in a heading to the document is a couple things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and choose View. I'm going to choose Navigation Panes. I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to choose the second option. This is my current headings tree. Notice there's no headings. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go Tools, check Accessibility, and I want to call attention to that it says no headings in the document. I'm getting a check mark for that. So right now, Microsoft Word's accessibility checker seems to have an error where although they recently did not check headings at all, they now seem to be going to checking headings, but I don't think it's configured properly, at least on Mac, because it doesn't seem to update when I add headings, and it just is always checked. So I think it's not working right now. It may be in the future, if you use this in a couple months or something, this might pop up with some information too, reminding you to add in your headings. So now that we've looked at those things, I'm going to go to the title of the document. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go back to the home screen. I'm going to choose the styles pane, and I'm going to select the option here where it says list all styles. And so I'm going to choose all styles to show all 1 through 9 headings. And I'm instead of selecting the heading, which is going to just immediately put in the default styling, I'm going to go and choose update to match selection. And so that will go and then put in this heading. Um, and then the next thing I want to do is go in and actually, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing I want to demo one other thing before that should be helpful before I jump into finishing up my heading. So what I'm going to do is just touch on color contrast, as we mentioned earlier, that on this document, I'm getting a lot of hard to read contrast warnings. And so if I select this hard to read color contrast warning, it will let me know that this color is not an easy to read color and I should change it. So I'm going to choose this middle option. It's kind of using AI here to kind of give you a couple different possible options based on the color you selected. And so I'm just going to choose the different color options that I think would fit. And this way, when I do the headings, the styling will be accessible rather than having to go back and fix it later. Um, so now the colors are set up correctly, and I can go back to my headings. What I can do is just highlight this again and update to match selection, and now it will have the darker green in there. And then when I go to this next one, this should be a heading level 2 because you start with the H1. There's only usually one H1 in your document. It's the title. And then you go into the H2. So this would be my H2. And I'll again right click or just choose the little drop down option, choose update to match selection. And once that's set, what's nice about this is that even if I were to change something, right? Let's say I change the color or I change the text, it doesn't matter. Once I choose H2, it will become an H2 and save all that formatting. So doing this as you're making your document can save you time because you don't have to style it. Um, each time it's automatically saving the styling and bolding and all that stuff. So now I can go here and I have this option here, which would be like an H3. So I can choose update to match for like an H3. And then we'll notice that we look back at our heading structure. We have our title, our H2, and now our another H2, and then our H3. So it's kind of grouping things together in a logical way. And now I can go a little bit faster because all the presets are saved. So I can just choose H3 or choose H2, and I could kind of add these in. Um, I think there's one more for the conclusion. And there we go. So now we have our headings put into the document. Let me see if there's any questions. Using the title format option doesn't seem to add the title to the summary. Is that as expected? Um, So the title is one you do not want to use because it doesn't have the same um, it doesn't convey things the way the headings do. So instead of using title, you want to be using heading level 1 when you're making your documents. Um, so it can be confusing potentially seeing that the title in there, but I would just ignore that and use the H1 as your title and then going down to 2 and 3. And I saw someone else was surprised about the colors failing, and so that's again why you want to be using a color contrast checker to make sure that they are easy to read and accessible. So let's jump back in here and we can look at images now. So images can provide not only visual appeal, but many times also convey other relevant, important information. So you want to make sure that you are using accurate spelling and grammar and punctuation when you're writing alternative text or alt text for your images, using the fewest words but a meaningful description and the same content or function, trying to have the same equivalent. And a lot of times that's up to knowing what the author's intent is. The other thing I want to bring up is why is alt text supposed to be the fewest words, right? The reason for that, it's about like 125 characters or so is what you're looking to come at the long range, is because the alt text is read concurrently. So there's no way to create sections for the alt text. There's no for it's just read repeatedly. So if you had a big paragraph or multiple paragraphs, a person using assistive technology would not be able to navigate it because there's no rewind or fast forward. So that's why you want to be creating alt text that's short. So then looking over here, we have our images and we have the 88 image.jpg. You're currently on an image, and on the right, you have the flowers in bloom at the Stanford Oval. So we have the left here, I didn't have any alt text, so it's just reading 88 image.jpg, doesn't convey anything. On the right, the flowers in bloom at the Stanford Oval, that conveys what that image potentially is, but it really depends again on the author. So maybe I'm focused on the flowers in bloom at the oval, but if this was a description about the mountains, maybe or something, that description maybe wouldn't be relevant. It maybe should be something else. And we talk a little bit about alt text. That's kind of something that comes into play of why alt text that's AI generated, it can't know your intent. So you have to be mindful of that. The other thing I want to just bring up is that it's saying you're currently on an image. You don't need to write image or picture in the alt text. It just automatically conveys that. So if I go back over here, what we can do is look over at this at a couple different images. And if the image is purely decorative, we could just ignore the decorative image. So in this case, I have this image here at the bottom. It's kind of like a banner. It doesn't change the content in any way. So this is just a purely decorative image. So one way I could do this is go right click on the image or control click on a Mac and choose view alt text. And then I could go in and choose mark as decorative. Another way of getting there is going to the accessibility checker, and we'll see it says missing alt text 4, and I could choose each one, and I could navigate and go down to this one, and then I could choose mark as decorative. So I'm just going to mark it as decorative for that one, and then we'll look at these. These are images conveying emojis, which is what this is. This section is kind of talking about. So these are actually meaningful images, and so I actually have some alt text um, prepared that I can kind of quickly uh, pop in here. And so what we can do then is go in and let's see. Yeah, here we go. So I have this one with the grimacing. I can delete the auto-generated alt text of it trying to guess and just put in something that's more describing the visual of what this is. So a grimacing emoji face, the emoji is yellow, jaws clenched, and the teeth are displayed. That kind of helps convey what that image is representing. If I go to the smiley face, again, I can do a right click or control click and choose view alt text, and I could enter something in here, right, the auto generate is a yellow smiley face with white teeth, so it's kind of close. But I could put in my own description a little bit more, detailed as well, and then continue to the last one up top. And this one is one where I'd say sometimes I get questions about is something need alt text specifically, or if that image is potentially conveying something that is maybe relevant in some way to the course on an overall appeal. So like for example, if you're looking at like an image about like Stanford community and you have students um, maybe on move-in day or something, that would be something that maybe is worth describing because it's helping connect with that Stanford community. So this is like an AI image. If this course was potentially going to reference AI in some way or have some connection, then I may want to describe this image. If it was just purely decorative image that I made, then I could just mark it as decorative. So that kind of helps you kind of think about how whether an image is meaningful or not can sometimes be again really dependent on what the author's intent is with the image. So I'll just mark it as decorative for now, and we can just kind of move to the next one. I'm just going to see if there's any questions. So changing the H2s, how do you change all the H2s in a document? The H2, you're really setting just the formatting for that H2. You have to manually go in and specify each H2. You can't, you have to like highlight each text and set it as an H2 or H3. And you don't want to skip heading levels, so you don't want to go from like an H2 to an H4. The heading levels should be logical and go from like H2 to H3. You could go back to an H2, but you don't want to jump from like an H2 to an H4. So I think when you're talking about the best way to make an accessible PDF from a Google Doc, the best way would be to start off by downloading it as a Word document, making it an accessible Word doc, and then saving that Word document as a PDF, which is kind of what we're doing here. So if you imagine this being a Google Doc and me just downloading it, that's the only step that's missing from what you're asking. And then once it's as a Word doc, you can start the process. When it comes to links, uh, descriptive hyperlinks can help convey relevant information. So you want to choose, which links are like the most relevant. You want to make sure people kind of tell where that link is leading. Usually, like 2 to 5 words, kind of describing what that link leads to, um, and really thinking like, will the reader know where they're going by just that link text? And the reason for this is I'm accessing like a web page, right, using the screen reading software VoiceOver, and we have the links rotor opened, and we have all this learn more. It'd be very confusing hearing that read, right? You might not know which learn more, where does learn more lead to? You don't know. So that is why you want to avoid generic names like click here, learn more, that kind of thing. When it comes to a link that's well described in this, like the challenges of reimagining policing, that kind of conveys where that link is leading to, an article about reimagining policing. So like you want your links to kind of let people know where they're going to take you. Going back to this document, I think there's 2 links in here. And so what I could do for like this click here, right? I could go in. I could right click on it, choose hyperlink, edit hyperlink, and then I could go and I don't see, huh. I think I might have over highlighted. Sometimes if you don't highlight exactly right, it won't give you the option to edit. Let's see. Yep, there we go. So now I have my click here, and I could put in. I think this leads to a thing about the texting dictionary. So I could just write like texting dictionary, um, and then if I click OK, it will update the link. For this other one, what I could do is I could like visit the link, right, and see like, okay, emoticons, Unicode block. I could copy like that title, or I could say Wikipedia emoji, something that basically is conveying what it is. You don't want the long URL because that will not be read a lot of times well by assistive technology. It will sound like a bunch of gibberish. So you really want to avoid the long URLs. So in this case, I could probably like copy the text here and just paste the text, or the other way of doing this would be to go in and I could do the edit hyperlink and then just change the title to like Wikipedia um, emojis or something like that. Let me see if there's any questions. Oh, nice. So someone's working on LibreOffice Writer, and they're saying that everything is pretty much the same, including the AI generated content for alt text. So um, that's good to know. There's like crossover between a different app has kind of a similar interface. I haven't used that application specifically. Um, so let's go back over, and now we're going to look a little bit about lists. So lists identify important you want basically to be using lists that are formatted using the software itself. So you don't want to be manually creating your lists. And so if I jump over here, we can see under the top accessing a list and it's reading the first item. But that's actually not what you want the screen reading software to do. That could be more confusing because you don't know how many items there are. Rather than on the bottom here where it says list 9 items. It's conveying it's a list, it's conveying a number of items. So that's what's truly that's why you want to be using lists that are actually formatted to be a list. So what I can do here is if we look at our lists like this one, if I hit return, it's a list. Like we go to like the next one. You can kind of tell as it automatically populates with the next bullet. But if I go back to this one and I hit return, nothing happens. I made this list manually. So the easiest way to fix that would just be to delete the two, go to the top. It kind of recognizes it's a numbered list and it puts numbered list. When you're making your list, you want to use the numbering or the bullet point options. You don't want to use any custom things or try and make a list on your own, trying with special characters or something like that. So the last one we're going to look at here is tables. So tables should be used to present data, not for layout purposes. They want to be organized in how they present that data and retaining the structure of the document. So some key practices is to keep data tables simple, avoid like merge cell or columns and rows. You want to include um, potentially like a heading above the table, like that lets people know what the purpose of the data table is, and ensuring you're checking in Word like repeat as check repeat as header row at the top of each page because that makes sure that the header row is going to be read by assistive technology, and I'll show you how to specify that in a second. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions. Um, Will it automatically update all the headings after changing the style? So if you change the style, I think it will. I haven't actually played with that as much. I believe it may not update the heading specifically. It might leave what you already have, but then if you have to kind of go back and apply it, it should. Um, so it's again more making sure you have your theme and everything set at the beginning so you don't have to worry about changing the colors and stuff like that later. Um, so going back to this, did we have a table here? And I'll note too, I made most of this document, like the text and stuff, was used through the Stanford AI playgrounds to kind of give me the text and the different to kind of make this, which is kind of cool that you can just give it a prompt to like make something kind of interesting for a demo like this, and it can just generate it. But I have this table here, and what I want to do is go over, and first I want to choose table design. And in table design, I want to make sure that I'm checking that there is the header column, that the header row and the first column are checked because we have the bolded first column and we have our header row. So making sure that those items are checked, along with going in and then I will highlight this first row because this is what we want read by the assistive technology to be repeated. And we go to table properties. So I right click and I choose table properties. And I'm going to uncheck allow to break across pages just because generally you want your table to just be on one page. And I want to check repeat as header row at the top of each page to ensure that the header row is read when accessed with assistive technology. And the other thing I'm going to do is put in like a title. So I could just put in, I have some text like pre-written, I'm just going to copy over. But like, you would just basically write maybe a sentence describing what that table data is representing and a title of what your table is. And you could choose OK after you've done that. One last thing I'll note too, which is kind of cool, you could also put in a caption. So if you wanted to, I could right click again and choose insert caption. It will say table one, that auto populates, but then you can add something afterwards. So I could, write if I wanted to, I could put something like traditional versus digital language or something like that, and then it will go in and add a caption above the table, which is nice. Um, so those are kind of, I think one thing I'm realizing I maybe didn't highlight as much when I jumped into this was looking at this example here of like why you need the table data. You want your heading row to be specified like we did, and you want your first column to be marked too if you have that, is because of something like this. Like here we have our um, I've set the first column for this top example where it's being accessed with screen reading software, and it says 0 to 60 time 2.6 seconds. That's really clear what it's referring to. But on the bottom, if I don't mark the header, it's just going to read 2.6 seconds. And that table data, it's like, well, what does that in reference to? And that's why you want to get the table the header row linked with that data. So that's why that's important. And the other thing I'll just note too, if I go back to that document for 1 second, is under accessibility, it will flag it if nothing is checked. So if I were to go here and uncheck this, we'll see that it will say um, missing table header, and then I would just go in and mark those two, and then it'll be checked. Um, so now what I could do, uh, having done this, the last step I'm just going to quickly demo is getting your accessible version as a PDF. So I could choose File, Save As, and assuming like it passes the accessibility checker and everything, I could go over, choose Word, and choose like Demo, Accessible PDF, whatever title I want. Choose the file format, choose PDF, and just make sure Best for Electronic Distribution and Accessibility are marked, and it will make an accessible version. So that's how you can get an accessible version there. Um, I'm looking at I'll demo very briefly, like a little bit about PowerPoint accessibility. So what I just will do is rather than read the slide here, I'm just going to jump into a presentation and just call out one or two things to just be mindful of. So the first thing to be thinking about is if I make this yellow, right, something that's really hard to read, and I go to the check accessibility, it's not going to flag that it's hard to read. The reason for this is that I used a gradient background, and if you have images layered or different backgrounds, the color contrast checker will not catch it. So that's why it's important to be using like the color contrast analyzer or some type of manual checker. Another aspect to consider is you want to be using your layout options like title slide or title and content because that sets the title. You'll notice in this example here, we have missing slide title as an error. And I could select it and then it would just tell me set as slide title. So I could choose that. And then for this other one, if I wanted to do it myself, I would just choose the accessibility toolbar. And under there, you'll notice there's a slide title option. If I choose that, I could just choose set as slide title and that will mark it from the drop down. Um, so that is something that commonly happens that people operate with a blank slide rather than using a template. So that's why you want to choose one of those pre-formatted templates. And then the last thing I'll just note, if you have any questions about would be like when you're making your slide, is to think about using the selection pane. The selection pane, what this does, and you'll notice I get over here a read order issue. So if I go to this slide, it's really a simple slide. We can look at the read order pane and you'll notice that it has the title and then the picture. That looks right, but the selection pane is actually read bottom to top. That's the way the assistive technology is going to read your content. So this tool operating from bottom to top, what I'd want to do is drag this down so the title's read first and then the picture. And when I make that change, that error goes away. One thing to keep in mind if you're using a PC, there is another tool called the read order tool that Microsoft has made. That tool works like the way you would expect, like going top to bottom. So if you're working in that tool, it would be the opposite order as the selection tool. But the selection tool is available in both Mac and PC, so that's why I'm demoing using the selection pane. And then if I go to this other one that's more complex, right, I would have to go to like the title up here and drag it all the way down to the bottom as that's the first thing. And then I'd have to kind of wade through these text boxes to find Central Park and drag that down. And you're basically having to manually drag these different items until they're in a logical order that can be read. So I'm not going to do that right now, but that's kind of the idea of why you want to use your selection pane. And as you make more complex slides, depending how many images and text boxes you're using, you may need to go back in and make some adjustments. So let's dive in a little bit to Equidocs now. So Equidocs is a PDF remediation platform, and it can be used to create an accessible PDF and it's really useful if you don't have access to the original file. So you're working with something like from a third party, like PDF potentially, or you made the content in a platform that's inaccessible like Canva, then you would want to be using Equidocs. If you have access to Microsoft Office as like was like the original document, you wouldn't want to use Equidocs, or if you have access to like Adobe Acrobat, excuse me, Adobe InDesign, then you'd want to use that like file and that project instead of the PDF. Um, so you can add headings, alt text, images, adjust the read order, links, all that stuff. So we're going to kind of go over that a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back over and jump into Equidocs here. And so I think there is in my resources document, you'll find Equidocs right up at the top. And there's this remediation page too. So I'm just going to like quickly show you um, on our remediation page on the bottom, there's a bunch of videos. So I cover everything from like how to get your document prepared by deleting tags all the way through tables. And there's guides and everything that's there. Um, and then when you're looking at actually going into Equidocs, I'm going to go and just sign out so I can kind of walk, give a walkthrough of how you'd access it. So I'll select um, this Equidocs sign-in link. And when I select the sign-in link, it will take me here and I'll choose sign in with Google. And then I'll choose the Google option. I'll sign into Equidocs. And then when I'm in Equidocs, a couple things to keep in mind. You could create labels. So if you wanted to make a label, I could make one like tech training or something. You can choose a color and then make that. You also have an option here for help. Um, the help content, I think there may be more if you switch to the classic view. That's something that I've noticed with Equidocs sometimes is that using the classic view and help, you'll get access to the user manual and training videos, but it doesn't seem to appear with the new UI for some reason. So just be aware if you want to see their help section. It's easier. You get more resources if you switch to the classic. The other thing I want to note over here is if I go to this demo PDF file. This is one that I've made accessible, but let's imagine that I got this from Canva and it wasn't accessible. I would want to remove tags. Now, in Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can see the tag structure if you have access to the Pro version. You can't do this with the Reader. You need the paid application. You could do View, Show/Hide, Side Panels, Accessibility tags. And when I select that one more time, the tags panel will come up, and this shows you all the tags in the document. And so similar to what we were doing in the Word doc, where we were putting in the headings, lists, tables, you want to see those things populating in your tags, or you know that the document's not accessible. So that's kind of a good first step. In this case, what I wanted to demo is just that you could go in and if you had a bad tags, you could just choose delete, and you could remove all the tags. That's one way of doing it. The other way of kind of preparing the document would be to go in and upload the document to like a Google Drive uh, folder or wherever you want it in your Google Drive. And then when you open it, you would just choose here. Let's see. I think the print. Oh, the file is in trash. Okay, I think I maybe have 1 second. I think as I had done this previously that it may have glitched because of the trash. Let me try that again. Um, so if I open it up, well, I should get the option to print. And if I print, I can then print again. And if I print again here, you want to make sure your destination set save as PDF. And what this will let you do is save the PDF document without any tags. So it's basically the most inaccessible version of the document, but it's great for Equidocs because you want to make it accessible in that application. So I'll just save it here. And then what I can do is upload it in Equidocs. So I'll choose the upload button and I will select the document and drag it over here, and we can upload it. And then once it's I choose the import option next, so it'll start to import. And the next things I'm going to kind of cover once it finishes is going over how you can set like the language tag and then adding in like a title, similar to what we did with Word. Whatever the actual document title is, you're able to do that in the metadata. So give me 1 sec. Uh, so if I go back over here, there we go. And then I could just change this to whatever the title I want, the evolution um, of language in the digital age. And that's what will be read by screen reading software. It'll ignore the file name. And I could put my name too if I wanted. You want to make sure you have your language tag set. So the document's in English. I could choose whatever label I wanted. So if I wanted to tech training, I could mark that and then just choose save. And that will um, get the document in there. And then from there, if I go into like this page here, what I'd be starting to do is the first thing I'd look at is I want to call attention to a couple things. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You'll notice over here, right, we have numbers for everything. So we have boxes. The boxes are called zones. And as I adjust the zones, they get bigger or smaller. So I can make them really small, so every line has its own zone, or I can make it big. You want it bigger, a bit big enough that the each heading's getting its own zone, but the paragraphs are all grouped together. That's the ideal that you're trying to go for. And then with the numbering, the numbers tell you how things are going to be read. That's the order things are going to be read by the screen reading software. And the other aspect that I want to bring up is if you don't see numbers or don't see zones, it may be because you've hit this button, which is to toggle the zones off. So if I select it a couple times, the numbers go away and then everything goes away. But then if I hit it again, it comes back. So like that's just something to be aware of. So people have gotten confused about where did my numbers go or zones go. So now we want to set up like this should be our heading level one. So I can open up the type. Now that I like the structure and the order looks good, right, for the different ones, I could choose this to be a heading. And then the order is one, but the level is set to one as well. And then when I go to this second one, I'll choose again heading, and then I'll set the level as two because that's the heading level two. And then if I wanted to go faster, I could use the keyboard, hit the H key, hit the two key, and now I set the second one as like an H2. And then if I go into this third one, I could set it as an H3, again, using the type here. I could go heading, set it to H3, or I could just go in and hit on the keyboard H3, which is a lot faster. So now I set up those. If I save it, I can go to the next page, and I could go in here and set this as an H3, or this is an H2, and this is an H2. So it's pretty easy once you know the flow of it to be able to set your headings in there. I don't know if there's any questions so far about what I've done. Let me see in the chat. Um, I don't see anything, so I'm just going to continue kind of going in now, looking at images. So when we're looking at our images, it's again a process where if I wanted to add a description, I could write it in the box, or if I want to hide the image, I could just uncheck the visible, check the hide zone, and that hides the zone. And so now it's disappeared. Um, and something I'll note, if I were to open Equidocs, like just go to the home screen for a second, I can show you that if you go into the images panel, you could see all the images for your document. So if you knew what the images were, what alt text you wanted to add or what you wanted to hide, you could work this way, but it's probably easier to see the full document. Um, so as you go in, you could then be putting in, the alt text for um, the different images. So I think like the smiley face, right? I could have like this like smiling, like grinning emoji, and maybe describe that more. Because of time, I'm just going to kind of speed up a little bit. So once I've done like the images part, what I could then do is start looking at the lists and the links. So for lists, like this one is like a list. What I would want to do is just move the box over a little bit so we don't get the one and two, because I'm going to specify that in Equidocs. I'm going to change the type to a list because it's a list content. It's an ordered list. So I'm going to choose numbers, and I'm going to choose the start, and it's going to start with one. And so as I'm doing this, what I could show you over here, actually before I did what I just did, if I go and preview, I recommend using this preview feature. It's showing you all the headings, right, and the read order. This is what potentially it's trying to kind of give you a reference of how things might be conveyed to someone using assistive technology. So this order, if I mess with this order or if I mess with the headings, it will change based on that. And we'll notice that the list here doesn't look like listed content. It looks like just the text. But if I go in and I do what I just was doing earlier and choose the list option, make it numbers and ordered and everything. And now I close this and like I preview the page, we'll see. Oh, 1 second. I think. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I didn't put in the number of items. So there's two. So once I put the two, I can move this line to delineate between the one and two. And then when I preview, I will get the one and two options like that. So that's how you could go in and kind of configure your list in Equidocs, and you can check it using the preview option. When it comes to links, if I go to this other page that had a link in there, what I could do is selecting like the I think it's going to make it. potentially text. Yeah, it's just a text box. So what I could do here is go over and choose the link option. I would want to write out the URL, whatever this URL is, and then I'd write a description for it. And once I put those two things in, um, that would make the link accessible, and it would read this description instead of the long URL. So that's kind of the idea of why you want to put that in. Um, and then I think the last thing I wanted to quickly jump in was the table. So for something like this second page, right, we have all these zones. So this is one where I would probably be doing some changes of the order of the zones a little bit potentially. Although if you skip numbers, like if your zone jumps from like 9 to, like 20 or something, as long as the order is correct, and like when you do the preview, that's really all that matters. um but in any case, you could also reorder the document too. So I want to reorder. I'll show you that in a second, but I'm going to make a new zone by holding click, and I just dragged and I just made a big box. I could also choose this new zone button if I wanted, and I could do the reorder here, which will reorder the page and the numbering. My point here is I wanted to choose table because I want this whole thing to be a table. I think it wasn't sure what it was, so it was just capturing the text. And once I have that there, I could then go in and double click on the zone. I think there may be a question. Let me see. What about embedded links in the text? So if you have embedded links in the text, it may catch those, or you could do the same process that I was doing here, where you could put the link and then the description, but it may also start to kind of potentially catch them depending on how um, on how you set up your document. This one, I think I configured it for printing, so it purposely wouldn't capture the links. But if it did capture like certain links, it will actually automatically put the link zone in there. But you want to make sure you just have a clear description of where your link leads. So looking at the table here, what you kind of get are these different guides, and you can move these guides to kind of cover the different parts of the table. So what's nice about this is that I could start to go in and do a couple things. Like one of which is I could preview this first to get like an idea of what things look like, so I can see if there's some issues with my table right now, and then I could go over and start to play around with like the nudge, um, all down or up or something to try and get them more aligned. What I'm noting here is that I actually need another row because I don't have enough of them in there right now. So then now I can kind of adjust these, and once I get the click right, I can go in and kind of pull these up. And I think I need one more. So I may have to drag this down a little, this one down. And now we kind of have our different rows set up. And so if I re-preview the slide now, it should look somewhat better, although I think I have to see how many uh, I can play around with the table, the text sliders too, to kind of play around with the column setup. I think there may have been an extra column potentially. So if I re-preview again, oops, I think I did too many there. So I got rid of the row. So I want more rows. So now it'll give me the rows, and then I think this should be the one that looks good potentially. Let's see. Yeah, and now we have our features, and we have that, and it's bold because I have set it to um, one column header, one row header. If I had more headers, or I needed to make adjustments, I could move those down or up, and then I'd write in my caption. I'd write in like a summary of what the table data represents, and that's kind of how you would set that up. So I'm just going to save this. And now that we've kind of done those different steps, like assuming the PDF was successful, which in this case I haven't finished remediating it, but I just want to show you what I would do is go over to the documents section, I'd go in here again. I could choose export, and I could choose generate PDF, or at the top I could choose export to PDF. So you do this once it's done. And so if I choose generate right now, it will probably flag some things because potentially, yeah. And so we get some errors that it listed out because I'm missing the summary, I'm missing descriptions for some images and graphics. But the idea is once you have it fully accessible, that's how you would generate your PDF, and then you would download it, and you'd have your tags and everything accessible. Um, so I guess if there's no questions there, I'm going to pivot over talking a little bit about AI for a sec.
And just
Let
a
me see
second,
if there's any
Watson, there
questions.
is oh, sorry to interrupt. There is a quick question inside the chat about existing PDFs.
If you have an existing PDF you aren't sure about, how can you first check it to see if it's accessible or not to know if you need Equidox remediation? So there's a couple different ways of doing that. Um, if if you have access to if it's on a website, we have Site Improve, which I think I also mentioned in my resources document. Um, yeah, so science, one of the things Site Improve can do is it can run some basic checks on your PDF documents hosted on publicly facing websites and provide feedback on them. Another option is if you have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro. Like if I go back in here, I could, I think, yeah, here we have like the tags. We can see what it says, but there's prepare for accessibility on the left side here. And if I choose that option, I can choose check for accessibility. And this will run an accessibility checker. And so it will flag, whatever things I have here that need to be fixed. And then it will flag other things too, like it will tell me like the color contrast needs a manual check, logical read order needs a manual check. So there's kind of this is another way of checking your document. And the last thing I wanted to bring up was there's also a free tool called the Pack Checker you could use to check your document. And then I have over here. Um, what I would say is kind of you could also, if you have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro, using this tags panel, which again is like the view, show slash hide, um, where was it? Show slash hide side panels, accessibility tags. When you go into here, you can kind of see different stages of your document. So right now, this has like no tags, right? It's like a document with no tags, and so it doesn't even have OCR, so I can't select individual lines of text. Versus if I go to this one, I ran through Scribe. It has a tag structure. I can select individual lines, but there's no headings, for example. So it's very clear that there's some accessibility issues with this document, and there's no alt text for figures. But if I go to this last version here, I now have like the heading structure and like a table and things like that. So you could looking at the tags panel and kind of checking the order, because this order here is how things are going to be read by assistive technology, can be helpful too. So I would say like a mixture of kind of automatic checkers and then manually inspecting the document is helpful. Um, I hope that answered your question. I'm going to jump over now to talking about some AI accessibility workflows for a second. So looking at AI resources, we have the Stanford AI playgrounds. They could provide a centralized platform to try different, different AI models. It's possible to create image descriptions. You could use, if you have access to ChatGPT, like a paid account, there's custom GPTs on there, like Image Braille and Accessibility Copilot. Um, and then if you go into if you want to generate captions or transcripts, a lot of the tech now, like even on YouTube and stuff, there that you can make auto-generated captions like from Zoom, or Adobe Premiere Pro has one that includes punctuation, which is nice. And OpenAI has Whisper, so there's many platforms for those kinds of things. One that I wanted to call out quickly was Accessibility Copilot. It was developed by Joe Devon, who's like very big in the accessibility space. And what it does is it can look at your code and kind of try and provide some feedback on potential missing things that could be up with it. Again, it's not perfect or anything, but it's something where if you are looking for like a base level feedback on like is my the code that I'm making accessible or not, having the if you have a Chat GPT account, you might look at the accessibility copilot option because it can provide a potential solution, try and highlight issues with the code. Another thing to consider that AI can do pretty easily is like making descriptive hyperlinks. So like when I showed those long URLs, it could kind of quickly go and take a bunch of URLs and then make them accessible links, which is helpful. Um, and so what I will do here is using the AI playground. I have like a sample document that I want to show. I also have some resources. So I want to go to here. So I have this digital accessibility AI resources that's also in my Google Drive in that Google folder. So some interesting articles that could be highlighted. We'll cover some other resources a little bit. What I wanted to bring up with the Stanford AI Playgrounds is I have it opened here, and like I could use potentially. Let me go back over this one where I asked. I have some links right that I want to get to be made into descriptive links. I could ask. Let's say what we could have different models to select. Maybe I'll use Anthropic, I guess, which is like Claude, and I'll say, can you turn um, these URLs into descriptive hyperlinks? And then I can go and paste the URLs in. And I think sometimes when I paste, there's like a duplicate there, so I just kind of remove that one. And then if I click upload, it will start to give me some descriptive hyperlinks for these URLs. So that's like a really easy way if you had a bunch of like resources, potentially links for like the end of a slideshow presentation or research paper, it could make them into descriptive hyperlinks very easily to make them accessible. And then you would just want to check them to again make sure that they're accurate and everything. But if we click on this last one, urban green spaces and health, and it says urban green spaces report, that kind of describes what this information is. So let me go back over and we can touch on images for a second. And so accessible image workflows, most Gen AI tools can generate image descriptions. And you can also use it to make images like I showed earlier with that generated image in the Microsoft Word document. So what I want to just note is that again, you want for all alternative text, it should be like 125 characters max, roughly. But then for an image description itself, like below the image or something, could be much longer and much more detailed. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. Um, and then you'll, regardless of what your tool you're using or whatever, you're going to want to be looking at it because only the author knows the intent. The AI doesn't know the intent that you have for the image, and there may be errors, or it may hallucinate or something like that. So just being cognizant of that. When it comes to use cases, this is going to be really great for complex images. AI could generate a description of the image. You could edit the description, and maybe potentially, if it's a really complex image, you might want to turn it into like an accessible Word document or something with the descriptions. And so I actually did this for an image that I was working on, like a stars course that had this like big complex flow chart, and like how do we take this to make it accessible. And so we ended up running it through ChatGPT. I edited it, and then we put it into like a Word doc where it kind of describes the different headings and sections to kind of describe what is being conveyed in the flow chart. So that's like one possible way of using it when it comes to complex images. um, another and then I'm going to kind of go into a quick demo of some other things. So I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat. um, Oh, I see. I think Don has asked me about what are your thoughts on audio STT file transcription tool available with secure GPT for Stanford Healthcare and School of Medicine. I don't know about that specifically, so I would say like if you're talking about like high risk data stuff, that would be something to look more into with like this like security and compliance team. But I'm not as familiar with that specifically. Do you have more information about that, Don?
Yes, it's available through the Secure GPT, and if you're familiar with the AI Playground, you can choose the different AI tools to work with. And in Secure GPT, one of the tools that are available to you is the one for that transcription service, which is as mentioned here, called the Azure Cognitive Services or Audio STT, where you can upload an MP3 file and it will return the transcript of it for you. And I was just curious if you knew about, how efficient it is and, if it's better than other free tools that are available for you.
Yes, I would like to try that out more. I think I feel like my boss Sean may have showed me that a while back. I want to try that out more and see how well it works. But that's nice that they have something with audio because I was hoping that in the future maybe the AI playgrounds might have an audio option too because right now it's only image files that it takes. Um, so let me jump over and I'll just do a quick demo over here.
And my apologies, but there was one more question here that Aaron had asked earlier about WCAG provides levels of severity for issues like A, AA, AAA, which helps us prioritize. And is there equivalent for PDF issues?
So there is like a PDF organization that provides guidelines for how to make accessible PDF files, but the PDF process can be rather complex and start to go into things that are rather technical. So what we're actually working on is trying to provide a version of a quick check document similar to I can show you from our website here. One second. We have created an accessibility quick checks document for web content. And so it could be viewed as like a Google Doc or as like a web page, and it kind of gives you different things to test for and to check that you have. And then if you don't know what something is, you can get like an example of what that item is. So we're working on something similar for documents right now. We don't have it ready quite yet, but that's kind of the idea of where we're looking to go where in the near future we'll have a page like this where you would go and get information about like headings or tables and how to make that content accessible. But this is a great resource if you're working with web content right now of things to kind of check that you can do to ensure your content's accessible before it goes out. Um, let me show a quick demo here of this is from the Arizona State University. They have an image accessibility creator tool, which is kind of interesting. So like if I go in, I could go and take, I think from this examples here, like this man on wire image, I could give it. And I think, let me see. Um, I'm not sure. I feel like it didn't upload. So one sec, I'm just going to refresh the page to see if I can get it to load. Um, There we go. And then what I can do is say create image details, and it will make an alt text description and a long description of the image, which is pretty cool. And then if you're using the Stanford AI playgrounds, what's really great about this is you can actually compare models. So like for instance, if I say, please generate an image description of this graphic, and then I could attach uh, this thing of like polar covalent bonds. I could go in and oh, I think I maybe jumped the gun slightly. One second. I think what I wanted to do there's kind of this plus sign. Oh, up at the top, I think I messed up there. So there you go. You go up top. You can hit the plus to add something else. So I could add um, maybe we can compare ChatGPT. So I could go to the Azure OpenAI and choose that. And I think we have, I think I maybe have done that right. Let me see. So Um, and then if I attach it, let's see what happens. Oh, I put them both together. But the idea is you can have you could have them both being compared. So I think I have to add here if I add in um, like Anthropic, I think now we should have both. Let me see, create. Yeah, and so now we are able to compare the two, and they're both going to write different image descriptions, which is pretty and again, you would want to copy this over and edit it, but you could get multiple models to create the image description, see which one is better, which is nice. Um, and then from there, if you wanted to give more feedback, can you make it, can you be a little more brief? You could they can go in and rewrite it based on the feedback and try and create something a little shorter this time. But like it's nice that you're able to compare the different models and then choose which one would work for your particular scenario. Um, and I'll also note that in my resources document, I have someone who did compare a lot of different models. I think some of these are not, are more specialized for images, were the ones that did the best. But it was kind of interesting because they were looking at um, a wide, they were kind of using a wide variety of different models and then seeing how accurate the image descriptions were. And I think the ones that were most dedicated to image description were because like I think for example like the Aesthetica Vision like seemed like it performed better than like the Seeing AI I think is using um, Chat GPT. So it was like kind of interesting just comparing the different image descriptions basically. And I had another study in there too, which was fascinating about just looking at different studies using AI generated image descriptions and some of the challenges and solutions. Um, anyway, I hope this information was helpful, and I want to stop here and just give a little bit of time for some questions.
Yeah, there is a
Oh, is
question
there
in
any
chat. Cool.
accessibility checker that regularly scans documents stored in Google Shared Drive? Um, There is there's like a checker called Grackle, but it's like a paid checker that would have to go. I think it's there isn't anything that we offer at Stanford basically for that kind of service. And again, right now, Google does not have the accessibility checker, which is why you'd want to be looking at downloading to like a Word document. Yeah, I
Hi,
think
Austin.
creating an EPUB isn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
No, please go ahead with your.
Oh, I was just reading. I think Allison had written if creating an EPUB is an option instead of a Word doc or PDF, would you recommend that for accessibility? Um, that can be an option, particularly if you know someone who wants that specific format and you're able to generate an accessible EPUB file type. But if for not everyone has an EPUB reader and knows how to work with those files, so then you may want to use in that case like a Word doc if it's more general. But an EPUB can be an accessible file format.
Hi, Austin. So my question is, I'm not sure I'll have time with my other work responsibilities to do all of these accessibility uh, modifications, although I'd love to. Um, what is there a standard of what you can do to make it accessible and kind of meet certain standards?
Yes, I think what you're bringing up is like the idea of maybe trying to have like a template, like when you're working forward on new content, of thinking like, okay, we're going to put in headings, we're going to have the alt text, you're going to have your images, descriptive links, and accessible tables as like a baseline, with the metadata that describing what the title is, like as like a standard of like that's at least you're hitting a general line, general basis of accessibility there. And then if you get feedback or something, you could go and make corrections if something needs to be updated. But at least having accessibility be part of your process, I would say, is kind of a good starting point of like going forward, how are we going to kind of make our content accessible? And when you're looking at like if you're using, let's say, Adobe InDesign, you could develop a project template that has a lot of these features built in. So then when you're creating your new one, your new flyer or article, it's already has the accessibility standards. And kind of similar to with like Word or other things, if you kind of have a standard template that you're using, just making sure that's accessible can go a long way.
Great, thank you. Follow-up question. We get a lot of materials third party from instructors, say, and so that making that material accessible. 'Cause they usually have a lot of pictures that probably don't have the alt text already embedded in it, and so it means a lot of work on our end. So any like standards for that?
I would say, like, as far as like trying to help with the workflow process, like potentially trying to ask instructors to provide some type of maybe descriptions for their images, because that could be helpful in case there is a student who needs an accommodation. They already have some descriptions ready that that they can implement, and they probably would know better on their material of like what they want. So that trying to get that information with the document could be helpful, because then it would just be kind of copying in some of those alt text fields, or you're, even if you just have that information, that you're more proactive in case that someone needs an accommodation. You're working with OAE, you're like, oh, I have the descriptions already ready to provide.
Thank you.
I see there's a question from Laurent. Are all current Stanford templates document presentation sites by default ready for accessibility? Um, I'm not 100% sure on that thing. I could follow up on and check. I don't know if there's like a main um, source for template files, but uh, we could definitely look at that. If there is a set one, or if it's by department, then it would probably be more spotty. But I don't know if there's like a main source for all like the template presentation content. Um, yeah, someone says hold instructors accountable for that. Use instructors who keep accessibility in mind. And yeah, it's important to, try and encourage instructors to be mindful of accessibility with their materials. Um, Thank you so much all for joining the session. I really hope it was helpful, and please reach out if you have any follow-up questions. And thank you, Don, for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you very much, Austin, for the session today. I posted some links inside of the chat, and we will reach out to everybody who RSVP'd with the resources that Austin mentioned today, as well as link to the presentation and other resources for upcoming Tech Talks. The recording of this session, once completed, will be posted at the Tech Talk website at techtalk.stanford.edu. But thank you again, everybody, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next Tech Talk session.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.